Rising temperature out there. It always makes moving kind of slow. It makes you appreciate warming up your car beforehand if you can. Although I did have one stolen like that one time. So beware. Now I take precautions like putting another car behind it before I start it or something like that. But in Colorado, we used to wish for these cold, we wished for like 4 degrees, 0 degree days, uh, because that's what like the pine mountain beetle that was killing all the trees. We were having winters that was not getting cold enough, and if we could have had sustained cold weather, it would have killed those uh, beetles. And so, meanwhile, around Colorado, around the Denver, out near the mountains area, up north 100 miles and south, we've got all this beetle kill that's um, destroyed so many pine trees, lodge poles, which to me is a big deal because I like lodge poles. I like pine trees. They make me happy. I belong in a Bob Ross, sort of thing. Trees make me happy. All right, let's bow our heads. We're grateful for the day, Father. We thank you even for a cold day. We realize, Father, all these contrasts in our existence. They help us to appreciate the things that we enjoy. When there's hardship, we know that we are blessed with also the opposite of that, of ease. And we're thankful, Father, for all that you give to us, for everything is purposed. Everything is good in its own way. We pray that whether it's 9 degrees or 89, that we will always be working to be glorifying to you and exalting to you. And we remember that this is truly your day, as every day is. And this is your Lord's day. And today may we exalt you as we continue to learn of your ways, open our hearts, our minds, to be like your Son, Jesus Christ. In Jesus' name, amen. So we're talking about the spirit of obedience, understanding there's no way that we can be fully comprehensive. I've given you comprehensive study guides that, of course, is much more than what we're looking at in class so that you can just do more study than what just we have in class. But we realize that every one of these things we're talking about, we could talk about for 2 or 3 weeks. Some of them would be a quarter. We could look at some of these topics for a quarter, just for one of these topics. And this is one of these. We're talking about Satan today. We realize we're going to rush through and talk about some things about Satan, but we know that there's just so much that we can think about because as God is the great love of our life, Satan is the great enemy. And he is the one that's trying to destroy us. And we really have to remember that we do have an enemy, and we need to not underestimate what's one of those war principles. Never underestimate your enemy. Don't laugh at him and think I've got this thing made in the shade. Many people have been destroyed by that, and this is certainly true when it comes to Satan. So as we talk about obeying God, we have to understand some things about Satan and how he tries to attract us to get away from God, because that's the big problem, isn't it? And so let's understand some things about our enemy. Now, we have our introduction to Satan in Genesis 3. It doesn't take long before Satan comes into the story. We have Adam and Eve that are created. We don't know how long they've been here, but we have the serpent. Interesting that Satan comes as the serpent. Was that a God-forced thing? Was a serpent chosen because of, what we know as a serpent as being a kind of a deceitful thing? There's just so much we don't know about this whole picture. We can't take everything at face value as if this is the whole picture. There's so much more. But the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, "Has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden?" And the woman said to the serpent, "We may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die." Then the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." Okay, now if this was the only text that we had about Satan, or we already know a lot, what do we learn about him? Master deceiver. Okay, he's out to deceive. It's a big part of what we're looking at today. Okay, very cunning. Okay, he knew that he know what he's doing. You know, here are the first humans, but he's already experienced because evidently this is the way things go with all beings that he works with, or all evil, is the spirit of deception, or else why would you leave God in the first place? Okay, anyone else? Okay, he is actually God's enemy because he's standing in the face of God trying to destroy God's stuff, isn't he? And we just we see so much going on in this text. We see his objectives. He wants to ruin the perfection that is there that day. God made a perfect world, perfect people up to this point. He wants to ruin all of that, and sin did ruin much of that. Of course, God was going with the flow on this. He knew where all things were going, but he wanted to destroy Eve, right? And of course, you think he has his sights on Adam as well. Of course, he does. And he wants to destroy God's influence. What does he say? You will not surely die. And here's the real problem, because you don't have a God you can trust. See, God's holding something back from you. And because of that, really, you're at a disadvantage because of God, because he doesn't want you to know something. You just have these inner workings of the devil and how he's working. And so he wants to destroy God's influence, and he wants to just mess up anything that he can. And he did mess things up on that day. This would be the beginning of sin that would have what would happen to Adam and Eve as a consequence of this. Banned from the garden, and they would see death. They would have to die physically. Would you say that was a pretty serious consequence to their action? Satan loves death, doesn't he? Satan is all about trying to destroy, trying to hurt. So if we knew nothing else about Satan, we come to this text and all of a sudden we see, that's someone I don't want to mess with. And none of this was by accident, right? None of this was like Inspector Clouseau, that's just a bumbling fool that doesn't know what he's doing. This is someone who has as purpose. He knows what he's doing against Eve. He's trying to turn God's creation against the Creator. Okay? And so we have this great liar. We have this great deceiver. Everything that we're going to see just about in the rest of our study, we can actually see in this first text. All right, so let's travel through some things. We know really where we don't know where he came from. These are unknown things, and some say he's an angel. He may be. He might be, like the great big old chief angel. What we do know is in Jude 8 and 9 that Michael the archangel, he's talking about those that reject authority and speak evil of dignitaries. And he goes right into Michael the archangel. What's an archangel? Yeah, he's a high up in authority angel. And it says, in contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against him a reviling action, but said, the Lord rebuke you. I think in the context we have to say that Satan had some kind of great authority, under which Michael himself, as the archangel, had to take that into account into how he was going to treat Satan. Okay, so wouldn't you like to know a lot more about that? Maybe someday we will. But what we have is Satan here, presented as this high-ranking person, and there are all kinds of theories, there are all kinds of ideas that are set forth here. Was Satan put as the chief of all angels? Was he somehow put into some certain spiritual division that angelic beings and other beings and human beings were going to be under something that he was going to do, or his control, and then somewhere along the line he turned. Okay, but maybe policy of God, contract of God has to allow certain things because of what he had promised to Satan, and so Satan continues to have influence. Now, these are things we really don't know. There are many things we could speculate about. We don't know the final answer, but we do know there's a Satan, and can God be consistent with himself in the fact that Satan exists and does evil in this righteous world? God can be consistent in himself. Okay, so very high profile. And of course, he is our enemy. Jesus talks about him, Matthew 13, in a parable. The enemy who sows the tares is the devil. And we have Paul, Acts, the 13th chapter, in dealing with Elymas. You son of the devil, you enemy of all righteousness. The child of the devil here was following right after his parent, the devil himself, in being the enemy of that which is good. The word Satan itself, of course, is something to pay attention to. The word means adversary, accuser. 1 Timothy 5 and verse 14, we have this great adversary. And of course, if you have an adversary, there's a difference between competitor and adversary, right? There's a fine line there. A competitor usually does not come into, like your war opponent, even though you compete against it. But adversary takes it into another arena, that we have an adversary, someone who is adverse to us, and someone who is a wall to us in some way. Now, interestingly, 2 Corinthians 6 and verse 15 says that he is Belial. What accord, what fellowship does Jesus have with Belial? Or a believer with an unbeliever. And there, Belial is the definition of worthlessness. Who is Satan? He's the worthless one. Tell me about his character. Tell me about his qualities. He's worthless. Okay, so we start to see there's not going to be too much good that's going to come out of him. And of course, the word devil itself, which is this word for, diabolos, and you recognize that word, right? What's the word we use? What's our word related to that? Okay. Someone concocting an evil plan. His plan is what kind of a plan? Diabolical plan. Okay, so we have that word that comes right out of this. And so something not good is there, but actually the idea, we might use it in a general term today as bad and wicked, but the idea actually has to do with being a slanderer. And, that doesn't sound too bad, slanderer. Oh, just one of those little slander things. Well, humans do that, except if you start looking at slander, there's intent in slander, right? Slander is never for the good of a person. Slander is for the bad of a person. Slander is to tear down something. And thus, to throw lies around, wanting to tear someone down. And so right at the root of the problem is someone called slanderer, if you will, by name. And his intent is to tear down, and not based on truth, not based on anything except that which is a lie and deception, unless he can use the truth in a deceptive way for his own benefit, which Satan is also good at doing that. Okay, so we, of course, have another text where we get to hear Satan talk. He talked to Eve. We have another one of his narratives in the book of Job. And remember that Satan has been up and down, walking through the earth. Remember that? We won't read the whole text, but he's walking to and fro. He's looking everywhere. He's been looking for, what is he doing as he's walking to and fro? We already know him. He's looking for some way to attack humans. And God, of all things, brings up, because God knows what Job is and God knows how he will defeat. God knows how Job will defeat Satan. He brings up, have you considered my servant Job? You don't have everybody, Satan. There are those that will stick with me. And so we have Job then working, and Job saying, oh yeah, you give him everything he wants. No wonder he's faithful to you. He's using his tricks with God too, right? You think God is aware of what the adversary is doing? God knows what he's doing. But there's something that we learn from this, and there's something that Job can learn from being attacked by Satan about himself and about God. So he says, but now stretch out your hand and touch all that he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. So we go through chapter 1. He loses his family, and he loses his belongings. He loses his servants. He loses his animals. He's just devastation. And yet, in this, what does he preserve? He preserves his faith. So we go into step 2. Job comes, well, you still not hard enough. You're still too easy for him. If you were to strike him, strike his health, then he would deny you. And so Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and struck Job with painful boils. Who struck him? Job struck him with painful boils from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. Now, this is just another narrative. If we had Genesis 3 and then also Job, the book of Job, do we have enough to know that this is someone we don't want to fool with? His intent is to destroy Job. And he wants Job to hurt. He wants Job to hurt to the point where he will lose focus of his God. We'll get back to that towards the end of our study and some of the tools that he uses. 1 John 3:8 says that he who sins is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. Okay, so all sinners are like whom? And what's his point? All sinners are like their father, the devil, who's a sinner. And so we get to Satan and we don't know what went on. Somewhere along the line, God has given evidently all beings a choice to serve him or not. There are evil angels, there are righteous angels. Satan has decided to commit sin, and Satan has within his heart, of course, all sin is about what? It's about self-exaltation. It's about the concentric walk of all things and self-absorption. And so from the beginning, we know that this being cared only really about himself. He didn't care about God. And he was a sinner from the beginning. Which beginning is this? I really don't know. Was it the beginning of his authority over? Was it the beginning of the human race? I have a feeling it was before the human race. But he's not a good guy. Okay? He's a sinner, and thus he's rebellious. Sin is the idea of rebellion against God, right? Sin is to say, I don't want God to lead me. And in that process, we choose a new master. We forget what sin really means. Sin means a new master. So there's a rejection of God in this. So here is Satan who's rejecting God. His values and his character are obviously not very good so far. John 8, verse 44, you are of your father, the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. Jesus talking about these scribes and Pharisees, these Jews, and he says, your father was a murderer from the beginning, and he does not stand in truth. And what are these people doing? You look at the courage of Jesus. He's looking right into the eyes of these people and telling them that they're a bunch of murderers. And they were. Jesus did not come to a pristine spiritual, hierarchy and system of spiritual people. He came to a world of sinners, and even Matthew 23, even the elite, the scribes, the Pharisees, were devouring widows' houses. They were willing to kill the prophets. And this is who Satan is. He is a murderer. And so who's telling this by his very words? Who's talking? Jesus is talking. Does Jesus know Satan? You see, Jesus has had dealings with Satan. Jesus is there. He's coming to God. Satan's coming to God. Job, it's too easy. Jesus is there. Jesus knows who this enemy is. Jesus knows what he's coming to defeat. Jesus knows the methodology of how to come and to deal with this one. Jesus knows. Do you think Jesus knows everything there is to know about Satan? Does God know everything there is to know? Yes, he does. He knows it all. But here's this murderer. Jesus says that he is this murderer. And as we saw before, he is Satan and he is devil. He is adversary and false accuser. And in Revelation 12, we have this idea of Satan coming up against the plan of God, and he's the accuser of our brethren. And what does he do night and day? He accuses them before our God night and day. And you have the devil pleading with God, which gives us the indication, like Job, that somehow God limits Satan's power, only allows a certain amount of power to be used by whatever contract that God has made with Satan. But here is Satan going to God, trying to get to get humans. Now, that sounds like I thought I could trust God more than that. Except when you realize the tools that God has given to us and the victory available to us, we realize, hey, we have more. We've got all the tools. It's an efficiency thing. It works. All the tools we need to take care of this battle with the devil. So he's a false accuser, accuser of our brethren, out to try to just make brothers and sisters look bad, try to get some sort of advantage. And it'd be interesting to know more about the details of that, but we don't have too much of that given to us. But this is interesting, I think, because it gives us an insight into Satan, what Satan enjoys. Okay, now some people really enjoy gory movies. They enjoy slasher movies. They enjoy torture movies. And, I had a fine, really good friend. He was a pathologist, and he loved gory slasher movies, stuff like that, um, but not me. I can't. Knowing man's humanity to man, gore, those kinds of movies are too realistic, as far as I'm concerned. And here is the nature of Satan, the objective of Satan, that he really does want to torture humanity. And we have Paul, who, remember, he had that thorn in the flesh. And how does he term that? It was a messenger. Satan sent it. And why? What does Satan want to do? Yeah, he wanted to hurt him. He wanted to torment him, didn't he? He sent this to buffet me. Okay? He sent this to harm me. And in Luke 13, verse 16, we have another interesting text. As this woman comes to Jesus to be healed, and Jesus says, Satan has bound her, think of it, for 18 years. Satan has bound this woman. And we get back to, what is Satan doing? Satan, just like the demented in a movie, in some gory slasher movie, torture movie, who has glee, in hurting people, this is who Satan is. Now, any of you ever watched some of these interviews with serial killers? There are serial killers that really, really enjoy their work. And they would enjoy killing as much as they could. And we think about Satan, and how could he really enjoy this? But when you start looking even at humans who have tried to fulfill their evil potential, and they've lost every semblance of conscience within them. They've let go of everything. They have become, in such an essential way, wicked, that they enjoy the slow torture of others. There are humans like this. In fact, can't even good people enjoy to see some people hurting because they've done bad? We could kind of maybe have a little bit of that, but here is Satan, who, it says, here's the enjoying process of this. He wants to torture. He enjoys torturing. And Satan has bound this woman. And we come back to our life. What does Satan then want to do to you? He wants you to hurt. He wants you to live with something that you just don't know if you can live with this thing all of your life. He wants you every day to have to struggle with all of the pain that you have, because if you have that, how can you work through it? He can get you to give up after a while, right? That's the hope. And he takes glee in the torture of humanity. And, we don't ever want to credit God with what he's not bringing about. It's not God that enjoys the torture. This is our enemy that enjoys the torture. Okay, so now we were talking about serial killers. When you think about Satan, who is he? He's the greatest serial killer of all time. And we've had some really efficient serial killers who have, admitted to killing like 60 people. And, of course, you think of World War II. or genocide of any nation, of many nations throughout history, even in the 20th century, even in the 21st century. And you realize that yeah, there are those that are willing to exterminate for whatever purposes that they're going to gain out of it. And the devil, we are warned of in 1 Peter 5 and verse 8, he's like a what? Like a lion. And whenever you see a lion, what you want to do is to go up and pet the nice, furry little lion, right? The problem is the lion is a predator. That word it's a huge word, is predator. You know, we hear that word, it's like, ooh, keep me away from the predator because I'm going to become his prey. He's going to prey upon me. And here is Satan as the great predator. And we see his work. How many has he tried to destroy? How many people have lived on the face of the earth? How many billions and billions of people? Was he in the life of every single one of these humans? Every single one of them. And as we said, he's good at his work. He's very efficient. How many people has he destroyed? Or how many people has he worked with so that they would be willing to destroy themselves? Put it that way. 99% of all humanity? I don't know what the number is. Even if we said 51%, is that too much? What if we said 10%? That'd be too much. But most people don't want God, right? 99% of all humanity, that he's the greatest serial killer. And this is what he wants. This is what he desires. This is who he is. And we've mentioned before, I think it's an awesome thing when he stands before Jesus, Matthew 4:9, and he's willing to give Jesus all the kingdoms of the world if you will just fall down. It's hard to imagine. Just fall down and worship me, Jesus. You imagine, Satan standing in front of Jesus and saying to his God, fall down and worship me, God. What does that tell you about Satan? To me, that almost says it all. What's going on in Satan? What does he want? He wants power. How much power does he want? He wants all of the power, so that even God himself is going to bow down to him. And so the very things that we see in humanity are the very things that operate in the great deceiver. Our great nemesis and adversary who's tempting us is trying to get us to do the very things he does. So we realize that whenever we want to think about ourselves and we're wanting to express our power, we're wanting something beyond ourselves, we really are becoming satanic in our being. It's really amazing to me at this verse. Of course, humans have listened. He's not a god, of course, but humans who listen to him, the term is used that he is the God of this age. Wow. People have left God. What's the alternative? They've made Satan their God. He's not truly a God, but he's recognized as a God by the world. And of course, he has blinded them. They do not believe because he doesn't want anybody to see the light of the gospel. It's not who Satan is. So the values and character of Satan, we could say more. This is an enemy that does not have, it's like the Civil War, generals facing each other with great honor. We would kind of have that feeling, which was not always the case, but, someone surrenders, Lee and Grant. And, here's Lee that walks up into great honor, into the house. And here's Grant that gives him great honor as the surrendering general. That has nothing to do with the devil. That's not who our nemesis is. He's out to cut your legs off. He's out to pull your teeth out. He's out to blind you. He's out to make you hurt. He's out to give you a disease that's going to hurt you the rest of your life. And he's out to destroy you spiritually. This is who he is. Okay, so we realize, of course, that he gets humans then to become his patriots, to serve him, and to exalt him as God. He loves that aspect of it. And we have 2 Corinthians 11. There are false apostles, false workers who transform themselves into the apostles of Christ. What's the idea? There are all kind of wicked people that will pretend to be spiritual so that they can take advantage of spiritual people. Well, but nobody would really do that, would they? Pretend to be spiritual just to use others? Yeah, they would. This is who Satan is. Would some be willing to present error because they don't care about the truth and they just want the power of being able to teach these things, to have followers? You know, you think of Jim Jones and Guyana. Remember that? The followers and the mass suicide of those that followed him, looking to him as, in his own way, kind of like a Messiah. Well, this is exactly what we're looking at, that the humans will become his workers. And no wonder Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. And therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness. So, who are his ministers? The word minister means servant. Yeah. Yes, and I think that's exactly true. Satan uses all kinds of motivations for those that would abuse truth with others. Will it bring them monetary gain? Will it bring them power? They will even teach truth in order to get to a certain place and status with somebody. And then there are those that don't care about. Of course, if someone's into money, do they really care about what the message is, except for what the message would do for them? You know. So we have this upside down thing ultimately of someone presenting truth, and that's really not what he cares about. And then we begin to wonder, how long would he really remain in the truth? You know, Satan does all these warped things in working with humans. Yes, Charlie. Uh-huh. A lot of problems. Yeah, exactly right. Right. It was a non-freedom effort of people, things they thought were truth, perhaps, but taking away the freedoms of individuals and setting up kind of a confessionary like Catholics have a forced confession, of sin by disciples and such. Yeah, this is, of course, the warnings. We have warnings, don't we? 2 Peter 2, with false teachers, some that would come and make merchandise of you, he says, and they will come with great swelling words. They will come with doctrines. Uh, Paul warned in 2 Timothy 4 that there are those that will, preach the word in season, in and out season, because there are those that have itching ears, and they're going to heap to themselves the teachers that are after the itch that they have, And we realize that Satan's behind all of this. There are people that are going to be willing workers with Satan, because when it comes down to it, we realize that religion can serve the flesh in a lot of ways if one wants it to, right? And who's behind this? Does Satan get into, religion? Of course he does. Does Satan get even into Bible translation? Think about it. You read some translations and you say there's only one thing this is good for, and that's to feed the fire. This is just a lie. Look at this translation. Is Satan in that? Yes, he is. And so humans join Satan And, important to understand when we listen to Satan and we follow Satan, whom have we joined? So we go backwards. Who becomes his minister? Anyone who's not serving God is following Satan. He's a minister of Satan. And he becomes someone that then does Satan work in some way or another in trying to promote evil things, even if it's unconscious. He's just doing evil. He's just not doing good anymore. And then he follows the pursuit of wickedness. And thus that's serving the devil. And there's the loss of his soul, and then there's that bad influence on other people. So humans will work with Satan, and this is what he wants. I mean, it's one thing for Satan to be this great tempter, but then he amasses this great army among the humans. Satan has this huge, huge army. And where is his army? It's all over the globe. It's in these cars that are going by. It's in the people that live next to you. It's in the school you go to. It's in the workforce. Everywhere that you go, we have Satan's army. And all of these humans, they don't have a motivation necessarily to try to destroy, but they are Satan's tools in trying to promote less spirituality among the disciples, in you. So, we take this very seriously, and we realize, we do have quite an enemy that is working. So we look at, of course, what he does, his methods. Looking at methods, he does tempt us through human desire. That's James 1. Each one is not God that is tempting us. It is Satan. Each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. And we always get back to that old, D. Bowman, can really, really go with this example, and the fish and the fisherman. And, the fisherman goes down, he picks out this perfect lure, and he makes it all, with all feathers, and he makes it, look like something that the fish would want. And it's going to flash light, and he throws that out there, and that fish looks at that and says, I've got to have that thing. And he leaves his safe little haven in order to come out and to grab that pretty thing. But there's something in that pretty thing. What is it? It's a hook. And this is the idea that Satan is going to try to hook us through the things that we desire. And we realize this is true. The world does not understand the work of the devil in their own hearts. Sometimes we close our eyes, perhaps, to devil's work in our hearts, but this is what he's going to do. Now, deception, of course, is a chief component. We remember that he told the woman, you will not surely die. There was much deception going on that day. In other words, first of all, we have the statement that's not true. You will not surely die. That's a deception. We have a deception of trying to create a new image of God in Eve's mind, right? Your God is someone you cannot trust. Your God is actually a selfish God. Your God is a jealous God that's afraid that you're going to know what he knows. You see what that's all's going on. Your God is someone you should say no to. But what I have to offer you is much better than what your God. I offer you truth. You look at Eve. What did she follow? She followed a great lie. But what did she think? She thought it was truth. And she thought that this truth would bring her this end. But it was a lie. And the lie brought an end. The lie had an end to it, an objective. It had a consequence to it. And that's, the tremendous sad thing about Genesis 3. So deception is there. The young man, when he came to Jesus, what can I do to inherit eternal life? Jesus says, looking into the man's soul, I'll tell you what you need. Go sell everything that you have and come and follow me. But what was his problem? His value system was in his money and his material possessions. Yeah. And so ultimately he followed out his true value system. And that's all about deception, isn't it? He didn't value Jesus right now. He thought he did. He wanted to know more. But his value system was upside down. His value system was concentric, based on what I want. And so it is that he was deceived. His salvation not there. Now, if we look from another perspective, we realize that Satan really does work in three big ways through this temptation and deception. He works through our desires which can be any kind of desire we have, right? He can he work through hunger? What happened to Esau? Yeah, he can work through hunger. Can he work through sexual appetite? Why does immorality exist? Can he work through being power hungry? You know, all these desires, all kinds of human desires we can talk about. So he's going to work through these things, and he's going to work through these other two things, which also really they are subsets of desire. Is he going to focus on our pain? Remember that Paul said, I had a messenger of Satan. What do you think Satan wanted to do to Paul? You know, he wanted to destroy him through his pain. What did he want to do to Job? Boils, head to foot. His goal, Lord, oh God, you've given him too much. Take all that away. He'll deny you. All this pain, the hope of Satan is now he's going to turn away from his God. Satan will use pain. He loves you to have pain. He'd like to give you pain. And he thinks he can gain from your pain. And then there is the focus on our durability. That if Satan can attack us, now it's one thing to you deal with a hardship for a moment and it's over and you say, man, I was victorious. I made it. Whew. But what if the hardship is there for weeks and months and years? It's like suffering pain in your life. What if you suffer, like 7 or 8 pain all the time? It just hurts all the time. And what does Satan want to do? Doesn't he want to destroy your durability? Wasn't that, what was that Revelation 2:10 to the Romans who were facing persecution? Be faithful until death. God's trying to teach this durability. Satan is trying to attack their durability by the long-term oppression that he can tear them down, and he will eventually get to him. And that's what he thought he could do with Job. And he was wrong. Now, Job was not perfect. He committed a sin, but he never turned away from God. If you understand what I mean, he never left his direction towards God, even though he had some wrong turns in there and he had to repent of his sins. So we have this focus on our durability. And will Satan give up? We understand that that Satan will flee from us in moments of temptation. We have this promise given to us. But is Satan going to give up on you in general and say, oh, lost cause? They're in the Job department. I might as well never even, try to get to them. Well, if he's going to go after Job and not give up on Job, do you think he's going to do that with us? Yeah, he's not going to give up. He is a very determined being. And so, we need to realize we can overcome. And that's what this whole quarter is about, looking at various things, growing as Christians. God will, with the temptation, also give a way of escape. We can run away from it. We can use faith. There's nothing upside down by saying that we can defeat Satan by our faith, when our faith is the very thing we need to defeat him, and that's the very thing that he wants to tear down. No, actually, there's something we can possess, that if we will grow this, we can overcome what the devil does. Truth. What is Satan about? Deception. What if everything that you seek for is truth? I want to know truth. I want to speak truth. Everything. I want to be truth. What are you going to know? You're going to know truth. And if you do that, what happens to Satan in your circle if you're about truth? Disappears. And through God, of course. And so, you seek this escape, which God promises. You stay out of the situation. Romans 13:14, make no provision for the flesh. Don't create situations where it's going to be easy to hop into the flesh. Instead, stay away from those things. Stay far away from those things. Don't make it possible. Don't make it easy for you to do evil things. Okay. And of course, Ephesians 6, we're going to come back to this, so we can skip it. But, the wiles of the devil are out there, but we can overcome. But we have to stay focused to do that. All right. One more thing. Let's remember, whenever we join the enemy, we have joined the enemy. Every time we are willing to commit sin, we willingly join the dark side. Every murder, every rape, every act of torment Everything that Satan is, when we choose to sin, we embrace his dark side and we say, I'm willing to have fellowship with the great serial murderer of mankind. That's not what we want, is it? There's a better way. All right. Thanks for your attention.